Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, my name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. If you are a cast member on this show or one of the other shows that I watch, keep in mind that what I'm saying is not a replacement for professional services, of course, because I'm just speculating based on an edit. A in-person clinician would be able to really get into things and be thorough and accurate, and you'd be able to collaborate on the conceptualization and, of course, the treatment. Let's watch.
It's like, I'm just going to have to be happy with however it is because it'll never be normal. Plural marriage isn't normal.
I guess I wouldn't know because you're always holding your phone.
Okay, that's interesting. So this is starting to be tit for tat. And she's essentially saying, well, when you do come over, you're distant. Maybe it is a phone thing, but it's probably more likely just a distance thing and probably more of a comment on their bond. But what did he say earlier?
It'll never be.
Oh, right. He said normal. That's. I don't think he would have phrased it like that in the beginning of this TV show. In the first couple seasons, he's like, he's using a lot of phrases about, if we weren't a polygamous family, if we were normal, then we wouldn't experience all these inherent negatives and barriers to happiness and well-being and fulfillment and connection.
Normal. Plural marriage isn't normal.
I guess I wouldn't know because you're always holding your phone. I'm always just looking for a fight, apparently.
Christine's speaking her truth. And when I am on my phone, it's because I don't feel like engaging.
Yeah, I'm glad they're editing it this way with the one-on-one bits and pieces, because they're certainly not saying these things in person. He could have said that in person, but he's not. And that is my assumption, that it's not about him on his phone and he's not being a dick by being on his phone. I mean, maybe you could frame it that way, but these kinds of complaints or observations, it's usually a result of resentment and distance and hurt. And, if you have a teenager that's on their phone all the time, or you have a spouse that's on their phone, I mean, it could be phone addiction, or it could be a problem, or they could just be into something on their phone. But often what is going on is the person is they don't want to necessarily be on their phone all the time, but they just don't feel safe, or they don't want to interact, or they're afraid, or they're hurt, or they're trying to passively send a message that they are hurt. And so they're just, and in their mind, they're like, well, I'm just on my phone, but they kind of know that they're communicating something of distance and disdain or disapproval, but it isn't always received that way, right? It's often received as rejection and hurt, which just cascades because it's just mutual causation of each person hurting. Like Christine could have been critical and maybe distant because she's stressed out or she is hurt by something that happened. He comes over and maybe he has a little bit of energy to try to repair. He puts a little bit of effort. Christine isn't, because in a normal marriage, or in a monogamous relationship, as in his language, you wonder if it was just Christine and Cody, if they had several days to kind of work things out, and Christine didn't have the continual incursion, because I don't think she's ever gotten used to having to share Cody with anyone. She, in the very beginning, even before Robin entered, she talked about how it was hard, and I think the way that at least Christine perceived it was that she was the new thing when she came in last, originally the third wife, and Cody showered her with a lot of attention, and Janelle and Mary didn't pull a lot of attention from him. And so for 20 years, Christine always felt like the preferred one or the more special one. And, there was some talk around that. It was hard to tell if that was actually true or if even Christine even thought that. But anyway, and, so Christine's always had a hard time. So with that continual incursion of like, well, now he's leaving, and or there he is. Anyway, there he is. I see him walking down the street with Mary, and that is this little pain in my heart that I can deal with, kind of. But when I'm upset and hurt by him, it really drives things home that I'm not in a relationship that I want to be. I don't feel secure. I don't feel close. I don't feel loved. And then the next time he comes over and he's like a little weary, and she's in this state, and he has a little bit of capacity to try to work things out, but things don't go well. And then he's like, well, I'll go on my phone, or he's like, I'll go on my phone as a way of protesting what she's doing to me, thinking that he's communicating when he's not. This is akin to a silence treatment. If you do this, or you have a spouse or anyone in your life that appears to give the silence treatment, it's passive hostility, what we call passive aggressive. But that phrase is so misused in popular culture. I tend to use hidden hostility, or even hidden communication, indirect communication. The individual, through their silence treatment, is trying to communicate, hey, I'm hurt, and I don't feel safe, or I've never felt safe, or I'm not used to, or whatever, to communicate directly about that hurt my feelings. And I'm hoping that through my silence, you will just, put two and two together and figure out that that thing you said to me yesterday hurt my feelings, and you'll apologize for that, and you'll never do that again. But of course, if you're the recipient of the silence treatment, in all likelihood, you're like, what's happening? And even if you do know, in all likelihood, why they're giving you silent treatment, you might resent them for not being upfront and for punishing you, because it can come across that way. It can come across as very punishing. So he could be doing that, and then Christine, is even more hurt, and then he's gone the next day, and he seems more relaxed around Janelle and Mary and Robin, and it's makes her hurt and angry and distant. It just cascades, right? It just gets worse and worse. I think that's what we're looking at.
So it's not an addiction to the phone. It's an excuse to separate from the angst in our relationship.
Before we go comparing it to
It absolutely could be that, which I think all of us can relate to in part anyway. And it can be a passive, hostile communication at the same time.
I mean, think about it.
I can say
You don't let me
it
make
was
any
rough.
assumptions.
It was rough, but I liked the outcome that it got us. Christine, you and I fought over the kitchens or whatever, but guess what? We had to get up the next day and figure our out because we had to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. On one hand, it's possible that it was ultimately good, and there was bonding and love, but there's also a possibility that there wasn't, and they were just prisoners of their own making in a way, or of the culture or something. So yeah, I don't know what I mean. The other factor that I'm just realizing is that in Flagstaff in Arizona, they're not close to their therapists. That they seemingly, I've said this before, that when I watch reality TV, particularly 90 Day Fiancé, whenever they go to therapy, at least the therapy that they film, it's usually really brief and ineffectual. And it's framed as like, oh, we went to therapy and everything's great. And it's like, your issues are so much bigger than that. Plus, even if it's a small issue, one session with a brand new therapist that's being filmed the whole time isn't likely to really do anything. It's just like a getting to know each other situation. So they, on the other hand, this family, from the accounts and the looks of it, are going to the same therapists for years and years and seemingly really benefit from it. They, at the very least, seemingly use it, particularly Cody, as a way to give them an excuse to actually just face each other without any distractions and have a really caring conversation. And that can be really helpful. And I've worked with many couples over the years who use it that way, meaning that they are doing pretty well and they've learned a lot and they've changed a lot. And if they could if they put the effort into it, and I'll encourage them to do this, they can try to manufacture a therapy session like scenario at home, so they don't have to drive across town and they don't have to pay for it. They will maybe go into the car and say, okay, we're going to go have a session, and then the kids or everyone just kind of knows to leave them alone, and they don't really go to therapy. They just go into the car, and there's that routine of an hour a week, that kind of thing. But for some couples, it's really hard. Plus, to have that third party there, sometimes as a safety blanket, sometimes just as a potential potential safety net that will put them at ease, right? It's like, well, Kirk's here if we get out of control, or if I get out of control, or my partner gets out of control, then he'll help, he'll reframe, or he'll intervene, or he'll remind us, or he'll da-da-da. And with that safety net, they feel much more comfortable, and they have the ability to be constructive, and they actually won't need me. Whereas if I'm not there, there's more at stake. There's more worry, and there's more distress. There's more cortisol, and things, become more likely a problem, even though when they do come to my office, they actually don't need me, but they need me as an option to calm them down, if that makes sense. I haven't had a lot of couples in that scenario. I mean, usually the couples I'm working with are in the middle of the crap. They're conflicting and going through a lot of difficulty. There's a lot of things that are really necessarily addressed by a therapist in therapy. Anyway, so it's just another factor that for however long they've been at Flagstaff, which I think has been, if I look at my notes, I'm trying to think, okay, and I'm guessing as to when the seasons are being filmed, but so season 13 was when they, transitioned, or were thinking about transitioning to Arizona. And right now we're in season 15, the beginning of 15. So you had the entirety of 14. So at least a year of being away from the therapist. That if you've ever experienced that before, especially if you really like your therapist, which I think they very much do, it can be hard, and can be another factor when considering whether or not you should move. In today's world, with the way therapy is almost always online, it's not usually as much an issue unless you move out of the state that your therapist is licensed in.
I mean, we don't have to. We go back to our own little houses, and I sit there and I check out with my work or whatever, and it goes weeks and months, and then I'm making up stories in my head about you. And I'm like, I'm never going to do anything with Christine again. She's so controlling in the kitchen. And that's probably what you were thinking of me, right?
It's funny.
And it would have festered because we didn't have to work it out.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's starting to sound like that one option that I put forward of that no, actually, I don't know. Because is it that because of the scenario of living in the same house, they found a way to love, they found a way to voluntary working together, or were they prisoners? If you're a prisoner, literally in a prison, you got to make things work, and you might not have the luxury of asserting yourself. Whereas if you're not in prison and you're not, forced to live with a sister wife, but you get forced. It's like you chose it. Especially Janelle, right? I mean, she wasn't even in. I'm going to my notes on Janelle. She wasn't even in that culture, because for some people you're like, well, Janelle just grew up Mormon, non-fundamentalist, not in the AUB. So, it's like, but then you're a woman in the Mormon culture, and depending on the region you're in, you can be still inundated with all the anti-women and be quote unquote forced to not acknowledge anyway. But it is a fact that all the women chose. So it's like, and arguably they didn't know what they were getting into, right? They no one told them, or they were being propagandized to or forced to, because to get into the good heaven you have to have 3 wives, that whole thing anyway.
No, you're right. And maybe that is part of it now too, is that we don't have to work it out. And I do come up with, I'm sure everybody hates me all the time.
What?
I feel like I'm on the outside looking in all the time.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so it's real talk. Christine is saying that. And I have heard this before from, I don't know if it's Christine, but it reminded me of in my own family. My family's pretty close, my siblings and my parents. But there was a time when a lot of us kids were going to college or moving out and that sort of thing. And it was, our family had a different feel. And my older brother, actually, he and I were talking, and he said, well, Kirk, you're like the hub, you're like the center of the family, or you're closer to everyone else. I'm kind of on the outside. And I was like, what? For those that watch 90 Day Fiancé with Debbie in Morocco, huh? What? With the donkey. Remember that scene? Anyway. And I said, I heard that from my brother. I thought, what? And I said, I feel like the opposite. I feel like you're the hub. You're the center. You feel like I feel like you're the center. Like, no, you're, it's that Spider-Man meme. And I think it's just evidence of feeling distance. And I guess you could think of a parallel there of they used to live together. When I grew up, I lived with my 3 siblings. We all lived in the same house, and we were very close. And then when we started to move out and go to college and stuff, there was a transition. There was a loss there. There's a loss of that togetherness. And sometimes I feel bad for my little brother who's 7 years younger than me, and he didn't have all those years of togetherness, Anyway, so it's possible that that's what's happening is they all feel on the outside and that everyone else is on the inside. But none of them are on the inside. They all feel like they're on the outside. But anyway, so they're all reacting, what? No, you're not on the outside. In fact, I wonder if I were to just take a guess, if there was some way of objectively measuring the centrality of each sister wife, Mary would definitely be the furthest, actually, even in the past, but particularly now. I think Janelle would definitely be on the outside as well, because she's pretty level-headed and she doesn't demand much. Christine, so I guess it'd be Robin, but Robin could feel like I could see Robin feeling like the outside because she would figure, I don't feel close to anyone. And my observation is that they were all close. So I imagine really all of them are equidistantly distanced from. And I could see Cody feeling like he's on the outside.
And then when I get together for family gatherings, I'm like, why would I want to go? Because it's just going to be a hostile environment and no one there even likes me.
Hostile. Huh. I wonder, maybe we'll get an elaboration on that.
I mean, I totally understand, going into a family function and just like not knowing where you stand.
Wow. Wow. I mean, it's a shame that she feels like that. See, I think this is the danger of spending too much time separate.
All the sister wives are flabbergasted. But if they did hate Christine and were hostile towards her, would they tell us in a one-on-one? I don't know.
The easier it gets, the more we get away from the ultimate goal I envisioned when we came into this family.
We all have to decide what we really want. If this is what we really want, or are we forcing it upon ourselves because this is the way it's supposed to be? Our religion taught us all these other things. Do you want to have a relationship with your sister wife?
It's so interesting. And yeah, it's a good question. And if the answer is no or maybe not, then this is a good question. It's important to ask this. But the way that he is chiming in, it's seemingly, and without him providing a caveat, I could see it being received as him saying that he doesn't want to be in a polygamous relationship anymore. And in other words, he doesn't want to be married to at least some of them, right? Maybe, I guess everyone would assume that it's Robin that he wants to be alone with, but I don't know if that would be the assumption. It's just interesting that he would phrase it that way. You know, if his intentions were to try to work things out, maybe, like, you know, if his position is just like, look, I'm open to whatever they want to do, but I don't want to do what we're doing right now. If we're going to go back to the way things were, I want everyone to work more together as a team, and I don't want to be the constant middleman. And I want people to understand that this is polygamy and we're in this religion, and that they're not going to get me all the time because this is not physically possible. And I don't want to hear it when they see me having a good time with one of the others, as long as I'm not, you know, flaunting it or something. It's just like, that's just what this is. So I'm willing to do it, but some things have got to change. But I don't know if they want it to change. And if they don't want it to change, or they don't want to work together as a team, or they don't want to work things out directly with each other, then I don't want to do it anymore. Okay, if that's what his position is, which I'm wondering if even that is there's a possibility that he just doesn't want to do it anymore. And but if he was, so that would be something that I would ask him, either in a group format or pull him aside. Because if he's like, no, I'm open for things to go back to the way they were, I would love that. I don't know if they want it though. Okay, well then, Cody, you have to have a caveat there, because everyone's looking to you. They're all married to you. And so you need to lead with, look, y'all, I want to have this work. I desperately love us as a family. I love each of you. I want this to work out. And here's the path. But if you guys don't want to do that, I don't know if this is going to work, or something like that. But the way he worded it is, you know, not that. And so it could come across like, I'm done. And so if he is open to having things go back to the way they were, which I'm not sure he is, he could risk shoehorning it towards the negative and breaking up by wording it in the way that he's wording it. All right, let's adjourn there. I want to continue giving a shout out to those members who have been YouTube members since the very beginning. They've been members for almost 2 years now. We have Fernando, good old Fernando, Miranda, D Cookie Monster, Krista, Jenny, Moira, Paola, MMT Stan, Lindsay, Lily, Eileen, Mary, Sarah with an H, Nikki with a Y, good old Junie Desiree, Adriana, and Deedham, and Beatrice Carter. All y'all have been members for 20 months as of today, as of recording this right now. So thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member and being a member for 20 months. Eventually, when you get to the 2-year mark, your icon will be 2 corns instead of 1 corn. I can't wait. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.